live. This is Law Call.
Hey, and welcome to Law Call tonight. I'm attorney Chris Young with the law firm of Perry & Young. Tonight we're talking about summertime injuries. We just started summer, and a lot of people are on the water, so a lot of times in summer you have a lot more injuries related to boating accidents or jet ski accidents. So if you have a question about any type of injury, whether it's land-based or water-based, give us a call, 850-392-1544, or we can always answer your email questions at lawcall@WMBB.com. Tonight's show, we have my law partner Les McFadder with us tonight. Les, I think we did this show a couple of weeks ago.
We did, yeah.
So it's kind of rare that we get to do the shows together, so we actually look forward to when we get on at air at the same time. Les, we could talk about summertime injuries, but there's also another topic that we're going to talk about again tonight, that's the legislative changes, and that actually deals with summertime injuries. You know, the legislative changes about how you can file a lawsuit, who you can file a lawsuit against, how quick you have to file the lawsuit, no matter if it's based on the water, on the seas, or whether it's based on land.
Right.
And so it affects everyone. And so a lot of times, we have a lot of our economy here in Bay County is based on tourism. So we have a lot of individuals that come to Florida from other states, and whether they've been coming over the years, I'm sure they don't know about the Florida law, but they need to know about the new law changes.
Right.
And so one of the big things that just jumps to mind is, individuals come to Florida, they get involved in an accident, they go home, they either retain an attorney here, retain us, or go back home and another law firm calls us. But it used to be 4 years.
It used to be 4 years.
And that was the statute of limitations of when you could bring a claim.
Right.
But now it's been cut in half to 2.
That's correct. Yeah, with the legislative changes that went into effect this past March, the amount of time you have to file a lawsuit used to be 4 years. It has now been cut in half to 2 years for a general negligence claim. And that typically encompasses things like automobile accidents, slip and fall incidents, things like that. You mentioned boating accidents at the beginning of the show. Obviously, we've had a couple very tragic events that have happened here recently that have resulted in the loss of life. Those types of claims could also be governed by the 2-year statute of limitations, and there may also be some federal law that plays into that as well, since it's an incident that happens on the navigable waters.
So let's don't get too confused.
I don't want to get too confused.
But Les, you've been very successful in the last several years of handling cases and navigating, no pun intended, these type of cases, because what a lot of individuals don't know, and a lot of lawyers don't even know, that sometimes you can have a catastrophic injury and it's actually limited to the value of the vessel.
That's right. Yeah, that's called a limitations action. Under federal maritime law, if a defendant, typically the defendant in this case would be the vessel owner, is sued for negligence, and that could be a wide variety of negligence. So we can get into that next, but they can claim, they can file for limitations of the amount of damages that can be recovered, and based on federal maritime law, those damages can be capped at the value of a vessel. Now, if you're talking about a jet ski, unless it's like a brand new with all the bells and whistles, even if it is a brand new with all the bells and whistles,
it doesn't matter at this point.
You're probably talking 20, maybe 25 grand tops, versus, a big sport fisher, it could be $2-3 million.
Well, Les, the thing about it though, we've seen injuries, catastrophic injuries, occur on a jet ski.
Sure.
I mean, you're talking about a small watercraft that can cause a very significant injury, and then we've seen our larger boats cause a lot less injuries.
Sure.
So, sometimes you can have a bad injury and not have, you can actually kind of be in a pickle with how much you can recover against the negligent party. But anyways, you've been very successful in overcoming a lot of those hurdles. And so, not to get confusing to our audience listening tonight, but if you are involved in an accident like that, by all means, get an attorney to represent you, because you can really, really, really screw up things and not really understand what you're doing.
Yeah, one of the first things that people think, and this will stop them from even calling an attorney sometimes, is whether you're renting a jet ski, whether you're renting a pontoon boat, whether you're riding on a parasail, doing a banana boat, what's the one thing that the operator of those businesses wants you to do before they'll even let you get on?
Sign you some papers.
They're going to sign some papers, and those papers typically will include a release of liability, which can be valid. They can absolutely be valid. And look, and I'm not here to imply that the people that do this for a living and rent these jet skis are bad people, or have some nefarious reason for trying to do things that are intentionally going to hurt people. I don't believe that at all. Usually these accidents stem from doing things that are just foolish.
Well, people get too fast, they get negligent, and negligence could be renting too fast, renting to the wrong person,
Right.
not getting the proper documents filled out, not understanding who you're renting to.
Well, not just that, but renting under the wrong circumstances.
Right.
I mean, think of one of these situations. You know, I talked about that release, and generally a release will be valid against ordinary negligence. But in the cases that I've litigated in the past, dealing with boats and vessels and jet skis and parasails, what I found is that oftentimes you can get around that release if you can show that the person acted with gross negligence.
Right.
Gross negligence is obviously, it carries a higher standard. It's a willful and wanton type of behavior that the person knew or should have known or had a reasonable belief that an injury would have occurred, you know, in doing this action. And the number one thing I can think of the last time I had a case like this where we were able to navigate again around the release was renting to inexperienced boaters, not providing them with the necessary education that's required before you can take those vessels out, and then sending them out in small craft advisory conditions.
Right.
You know,
Or basically dangerous conditions.
dangerous conditions.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we live here, and we have a lot of boaters that watch this show. And, you know, there are days that I know I won't take my boat out, you won't take your boat out. And the reasonable person who understands the Gulf, who understands the pass, who understands these inland waters, they would never take their boat out. But you get somebody coming in from, you know, the Midwest, and they've never seen the beautiful Gulf Coast and the white sandy beaches, and they get overtaken. Oh, I'm going to go see the dolphins. I want to do this. You know, and they go out there, and they really have to rely on these folks that are renting this to, hey, is it safe to go out there? Because we have the superior knowledge in that
They're
case.
relying on their expertise. They're
Correct.
relying on those individuals to tell them what to do.
Correct.
You know, chances are most tourists that come down here have never even
And they
rented
probably think it's
No.
perfectly fine, and it's
Right.
just not. And you know, you look back on it now, and you go, why in the world would you rent to these people who are just inexperienced? Now, again, that doesn't excuse the person who is doing the act. And that kind of leads us into the second legislative change that's been a big change, is the comparative fault aspect of the new law. It used to be that in Florida, we were a pure comparative negligence state, meaning that you could be 90% at fault and still recover 10% of your damages. Now, if you're more than 50% at fault, there's a complete bar to any recovery whatsoever. So, you know, even in these watercraft type injuries, operator error can absolutely factor into it. And it's just another reason why you need to talk with an attorney that can help you work through a lot of those issues that might pop up.
So Les, I'm getting a text message here, and the question has to deal with a release. Their family, this person's family, rented a pontoon boat, and they signed a release. They were basically forced to actually have to sign it before they could get their day started. They were not told about any releases until they got there. They pay the deposit. Let's see here. They pay the deposit. They show up. They're ready to go. And they've got 6 children with them, 5 adults, and then all of a sudden somebody says, hey, you got to sign this release. You got to comply with holding us harmless, or we're not going to let you go. And basically their vacation has been jeopardized now.
Right.
So they signed the release. Is that release valid?
It can be.
Okay.
It can be, again, under the circumstances. I mean, is it unreasonable to rent a pontoon boat to an adult? No.
Okay.
But what's the size of the vessel? You mentioned 6 kids and 5 adults.
That's
That's
11.
11 people.
Right.
What's the weight, total weight capacity? You know, these vessels have weight limits on them. Is it a pontoon boat that is big enough? Or is it one that, you know, that's really not the right boat you need to be sending them out on, because now you're in danger of taking on water if you have too much weight. And so there's a lot of things and details that you have to look at in that type of situation. But for ordinary negligence, you know, the dad's out there driving the boat and he ends up hitting a navigational buoy because he doesn't know, you know, red, right, return and all that.
Right.
You know, the person that rented the pontoon boat probably not going to be responsible for that.
Right.
Send them out in a boat that has a maximum capacity of 6 people, and there's 11 on board, and it starts taking on water, and then they go to find there's only, you know, 8 life preservers. Yeah, now you're looking at some problems for the rental company, because they have to act reasonably. Now again, was it foreseeable? Was it reasonably foreseeable that something could happen? Well, it depends. Weather conditions, equipment, education. It's very fact specific, which is again why you really need to talk to a lawyer.
Phone lines are open, 850-392-1544. You can always email us at lawcall@wnbb.com. We're going to take our first break of the evening, Les, and we'll be back in just a moment. And welcome back to Law Call tonight. We're covering summertime injuries, Les. We just got through talking about a lot of jet ski, boating accidents.
Right.
But we actually have an email question that came through, and it's from Callie, and it talks about, I believe, a gas grill. My husband was badly burned over the weekend using our gas grill. We swapped our empty tank for a full one at a gas station, and he's sure something was wrong with the tank. What should we do, Callie?
Callie, the first thing you need to do is you need to preserve that tank. That's valuable evidence that has to be inspected. I've actually worked cases involving gas leaks and explosions. Sometimes it's user error, and sometimes it's a complete fluke and an accident. And it sounds to me like if everything was working right, the grill was taken care of, it had good burners, you didn't have any leaking burners where gas could drop down. The connections were all good. The connection was tight, and the tank just exploded. I mean, there absolutely could be a defective tank, but that's going to require a cause and origin expert, is what we call them. Basically a fire inspector, to come and look at it, and they can determine a lot of times what the root cause of that was. And if it was in fact a defective canister, like the ones you trade out at the convenience stores, then yeah, there's liability there. Because again, when you go and you rent a product or you buy a product or trade one out like that, you're relying upon a warranty. It's not an express written warranty, but it's an implied warranty that this is fit for its intended purpose. And exploding propane tanks are not what they're designed. They're not designed
to explode like that.
They're not supposed to anyway.
So, but Les, there's a common theme there. Whether it's a boating accident, whether it's jet ski, same thing, or a gas grill. Hire an attorney. Hire someone that's going to help you, navigate that process, and hire somebody who's going to actually, tell you what to do, like preserve the evidence. Without the tank, you probably have no case. Without a receipt of where you purchased it from, you have no case. I mean, you have to have a chain of custody here. So, going at it alone, and maybe somebody saying, hey, well, we'll take care of this, don't worry about it, and then all of a sudden your 2 years passes. Well, no matter if they were at fault or not, you are forbidden from ever filing a lawsuit against that individual or trying to make a recovery from them. So by all means, the common theme here is you hire an attorney. If you get engaged in something where you're injured, hire a law firm like ours that specializes in helping people who have been injured in accidents, whether it's propane tanks, whether it's a boating accident, jet ski, or your typical run-of-the-mill auto accident case list. A lot of those cases are very complex, and what seems like just a real simple exchange of information a couple of days later manifests itself into, someone actually has a burning sensation in their spine, or maybe they have a pain that won't go away in their shoulder or their knee. And they're not, maybe they just felt like they slept wrong, and then all of a sudden, hey, I was involved in an accident, and what's going on here? So, Les, whether it's a boating accident or a car accident or just something with a propane tank burning, call an attorney, get some help, get somebody there that can actually help you navigate the process, who specializes in this, because the other common theme is fighting the insurance company day in and day out. Right. Now we're talking about the legislative process, changing it from a 4-year statute to a 2-year statute, changing it from comparative to contributory negligence. Those are major, major changes, and you can get caught with your pants down if you're not careful, if you don't know what you're doing. Yeah,
you absolutely can. And you were talking about the these catastrophic injuries, and the propane. It makes me think of somebody suffering very severe burns that would require very intensive specialized medical care. This is one of the things that if you suffer a really bad injury, or you've got a family member that has suffered a catastrophic injury or a death, probably the last thing they're thinking about is, oh, I need to go ahead and get a lawyer on the line. And if you're injured, the first thing you need to take care of, and the primary thing you need to do, is make sure you get appropriate medical care. I mean, that is first and foremost before everything else. But for those family members of people that are injured, the spouses, the adult children, you want to know what you can do when your loved one is getting taken care of medically. Reach out to an attorney, because while you're focusing on what is most important to you and your family, which is getting the care and getting better, we can focus on collecting the evidence, preserving the evidence, making sure that propane tank doesn't get tossed, making sure that gas grill doesn't get thrown away, making sure that camera footage from that convenience store adjacent to where you got rear-ended doesn't have it erased because they're on a 7-day loop. You know, these are all things that can make the difference between a successful case and getting full compensation and really being hung out to dry. And, you know, again, you don't want people to think that, you know, that there's some, I mean, we're here to help. You know, we want to help, and we want to make sure people are treated fairly and they're adequately compensated for some loss that they did not ask for, that they did not want, but they were unfortunate enough to get. That's our job, is to protect the process and protect those people.
You know, Les, you said something really, an accident they didn't ask for.
Right.
And that's an accident.
That's right.
I mean, some people make, you know, the intentional acts. Some people do things on accident, but it's something, the injured person was injured based on something they didn't ask for.
Right.
And, you know, so keep in mind, we have a lot of individuals coming to our area now. I mean, try driving across the bridge. Now, unless you live across the bridge, and thank the Lord, I don't. I live on this side of the bridge in Panama City. And it gets to a point where, you know, during the summertime, we don't even like to travel across the bridge to go into Panama City Beach. And if we do, we'll go around 388 to go on the west end over there.
Right.
But the reason I bring that up is we're going to have even more individuals coming to our area now because of the summer, you know, the beach and tourism. And that leads into why you have to have uninsured motorist coverage.
Right.
And that's an insurance protection that protects you when somebody else doesn't have enough or they don't have any insurance coverage, unless there's been multiple cases that we've had over our 20 to 25 year span of practicing law. Had it not been for uninsured motorist coverage that someone was smart enough to buy, they would have not recovered anything.
Right.
And the injuries were catastrophic.
And people don't realize how important it is oftentimes until it's too late. But I've said it before, I'll say it again, Florida is the only state in this country that does not require an individual to have liability coverage to protect personal injuries. So, and statistically speaking, those folks that go in and say, I just want to be legal, I just want legal insurance, or other people call it full coverage.
Full coverage.
I got full coverage. Chances are they've got the minimum insurance required by Florida, which is $10,000 in property damage liability from a liability standpoint. That's it. $10,000 to fix a car that is, you know, even used cars these days are, you know, they have a very high value. Right.
Now than they have been ever.
So, you know, uninsured motorist is the only way to ensure that if you are unfortunate enough to be in one of those accidents that you didn't ask for, and you do end up suffering an injury or you miss time from work, uninsured motorist coverage is really the only coverage that oftentimes is going to be there for you, because statistically speaking, if you're going to get hit in the state of Florida, it's going to be by somebody that doesn't have any liability coverage or has the bare minimum liability coverage of $10,000. Right. And that's just, you know, that's not even a full visit to the emergency room with a good workup.
You know, Les, one of the things that we've been offering to our, you know, clients and just viewing audience is basically, if you got questions about your insurance policy, come talk to us. Yeah. I mean, we'll be glad to review it for you, no cost, no charge. Sit down with you or do it over the phone or do it via Zoom and just explain what kind of coverage you have and can you afford more coverage, and if you can afford more coverage, what levels of insurance should you have to protect you and your family?
Yeah, you'd be surprised that in terms of the amount of premium charged for these types of coverages, uninsured motorist coverage is among the lower.
Extremely
Property
cheap.
Damage liability is what costs the most.
Right.
Because that's the most common claim. But uninsured, it's relatively speaking, it's pretty reasonable.
So we have a caller on the line, Penny from Houston County. Penny, go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, I fell at a restaurant Mother's Day, and I went to the hospital the next following day, and they said I had multiple contusions, and I couldn't walk for 3 or 4 weeks. I can't seem to get anybody to help me on this.
Penny, so you fell on Mother's Day, so it's been about, about a month less, is that right? About a month ago. Fell at a restaurant, multiple contusions, bruising, and nobody can help her.
Well, and one of the things, Penny, I noticed you're calling from Houston County, across state line up in Alabama. Did this happen in Alabama or did this happen in Florida or another state?
In Alabama.
So, caveat, full disclosure, neither Chris nor I are licensed to practice in Alabama. However, two of our partners, Larry Perry and Ted Howell, are licensed to practice in Alabama. So we can reach out and give you a call and see if we can help you out in that situation, number one. Number two, I can't speak as to what Alabama law is, but I know that Alabama also has had tort reform.
Yes.
And their laws have changed. It really, the playing field has been tipped back towards the insurance company in a lot of ways, and so there are a lot of defenses that these insurance companies can raise on behalf of restaurants, whether it be an open and obvious, and I've said it before, and this is true throughout the country. Just because you slip or trip and fall on somebody else's property does not automatically make the restaurant or store legally liable. However, if you slipped on, in Florida, if you slipped on a slippery substance on the floor and it had been there for a long enough time period for the restaurant owner to know about it and do something about it, well, then there could be liability. I'm not exactly sure how Alabama works, except that I know that Alabama's tort laws are a lot more strict than Florida's are.
But
but it's worth a call.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off. But Penny, we're about to go to a break. But to follow up with what Les is saying, we'll give you a call tomorrow. We need some more facts, and we'll be able to put some pieces together for you. And if we can help you, we'd be glad to. Phone lines are open, 850-392-1544. You can always email us your questions at lawcall@wmbb.com. We've got to take our final break of the evening, and we'll be back in just a moment. And welcome back to Law Call. We're in our last segment of the evening. We've only have a few moments left, but it's our time to kind of give a shout out to some individuals that text us throughout the week and call us throughout the week, or just love to hear their names said on the television.
That's right. That's right.
And so, Les, you've got your fancy iPad there.
I do. Do you want me to go first? Because last time I took too long.
You go first.
Okay.
Okay. I'll kick you under the table here if you get too long.
Okay.
But you've been practicing that. I'm sure you've been writing that down all week.
I have. I've got my list. First off, shout out to my mom and dad. Pam Myers watches us every week. Big fan. Jamie and Ed, Nick and Lauren, Bernard and Maddie. That's my son's basketball coach's mom and dad. I found out this weekend at the tournament they watch us every week. Okay. So thanks for watching us, Bernard and Maddie. Shout out to Rick at the Marlin, my Aunt Ann up in Abbeville, and my wife and daughter are watching at home. So,
and
Eli.
You didn't say Eli.
That's because Eli's.
I got your back, brother.
Eli's at a friend's house swimming.
I don't
Shout
care.
out to the pasty
I don't
gangster.
care. I don't care. I had your back, buddy. So giving shout outs to Ashley. My mom is watching tonight. and Trey Smith, Judy Smith. Gary's watching as usual. He's always texting us, and I'm surprised you. That's why you didn't have your iPad up during the show because you're afraid it's going to be lit up by Gary. The Buck always watches. Our Boss Taraj, our fishing team, we have a big weekend coming up, Les, for the Bay Point Billfish tournament, and they're all getting us ready to go for that. Double E Steve, I don't know if he's watching or not, but I'm giving him a shout out. Inside Story from Omaha. And Delaney and Vicky are watching, so we want to thank everybody for watching tonight. You got to say something. You got 30 seconds. Come on, say it.
Well, I guess just go back to kind of reiterate what we were talking about today. Be careful out there.
Yes.
I love the question that our Facebook page. What was something you did as a kid that would be considered dangerous now? Which basically everything.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Big difference. The texting, the distraction. There's just so much out there. So please be careful. Have fun.
Yes.
Man, watch those double red flags. For goodness sake, watch those double red flags.
We were out there yesterday offshore, and it was extreme. The current offshore was screaming. So be careful. Be careful.
Please be careful.
Thank you for watching tonight. Same time, same place next week, and good evening.
Good night.